what would you say if someone were to ask you, because we want to have this takeaway from the conference, why is it still a good idea to invest in cannabis? What would your response be? Hey everyone, back in Miami at the Benzinga conference. Rainy Miami, unfortunately, here in the early parts of April. Happy to be joined, the CEO of Xebra Brands, Garnett. Good to see you.
Good to see you. It's a little wet, but I was hoping for the cabana experience here in Miami.
What would that have been like, huh?
It would have been much more lively show.
I think so. It's probably good for my liver that it didn't.
Would have been Hurricane Benzinga on location, right? Anthony Barrell's joining with us, but it's good to see you. How's the vibe been? We wanted to have you on because big announcement, obviously, last month about obtaining and selling and producing and manufacturing cannabis under THC 1% in the Mexican market, which is actually big news that a lot of people found. How did he do it? How did he get into the Mexican market? But you announced last week an agreement, an MOU with Virtusa, which is basically a technology for cannabis infused products. So walk us through what that maybe agreement means, the significance of it all, and why investors most importantly should care.
Sure. Yeah. So I think it's important because it shows the steps that it's going to take to actually create products in Mexico. So Virtusa is a strong partner of ours. They support our beverage manufacturing and emulsion in Canada for our Vicious Citrus brand. And they want exposure to the Mexican marketplace. Right. We need partners in Mexico to accomplish beverages, everything that we're doing there. So it's a natural partnership of two companies that work really well together and want to expand and grow the market in Mexico.
You talked in the past, this took 4 years to get into the Mexican market.
Yeah.
I'd be curious as to what kind of calls that you're fielding, knowing that everybody's probably asking how'd you do it. So I know.
Yeah, I think that how you do it it's an interesting, it's a long legal answer, though, the more important answer is what do we do with it now? Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the calls that I'm fielding are, a lot of the big suppliers in the space already interested in Mexico. It's 140 million people, second largest market for cannabis in the world next to the United States. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of interest, but I think a lot of it was before, we won the Supreme Court injunction, then 14 months later got the authorizations last month. And so it was, well, will they get it? Will they get it? Well, now they got it. Well, now what are they going to do? Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of the conversation, to be honest, for me is I'm enjoying the conversations because what we're going to do has a lot to do with who we're going to work with, which products we're going to go to market first, how we're actually going to get those products to market. Most people don't know that my plan is really to get products to market before we actually have our own supply in Mexico, and we can do that through an import agreement that we have with another company, which will allow us the inputs, the CBD, to be able to start creating the products, to get the products on shelves, mm-hmm. and then we will pivot that to a domestic supply chain as soon as we can get the crops growing.
Good opportunity.
What gets you excited most about Mexico as far as the product mix? Like, what's the focus, or is it kind of to roll out a portfolio of brands?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think the exciting thing for Mexico for me is my experience in the Canadian cannabis industry has been such, since pre-legalization and working with a couple of licensed producers, moving them forward, one private, one public. There's all sorts of market challenges around capital, but there's also the challenges just around the regulation. And I think that, not that I can do it, I think it'll take a village to raise the Mexican cannabis market, but we have the ability to now look at a mature federal market like Canada. Mm-hmm. We have the ability to look at mature states, Colorado, mm-hmm. California. Mm-hmm. What did they do well? How do we replicate that in Mexico? What did they struggle at? What can we do better? How can we help guide by looking to the past to the regulator and say, hey, COFEPRIS, I understand what you're trying to accomplish here on public safety, but this was the path that maybe other states or the FDA or Health Canada went through, and this was the result. So, hey, yeah, full on board. Let's go do that. Hey, that didn't work out so well. Let's just look at the history. And so how can we help them navigate this to, an easier course for them, but a quicker course for the consumer to start, evaluating and enjoying the products in the market?
When it comes to leveraging relationships, because you're going to need help support too, like entering the Mexican market, you were mentioning off camera about how this was a 4-year process for you to obtain a license. Why weren't more companies, I guess I don't know if it's a question that you could answer, but are you surprised that more companies were not strategizing and try to obtain licenses 4 years ago like you were?
Yeah, and so the first clarification I just want to make sure is that we have an authorization, not a license. So it's run very differently in Mexico than it is in Canada because there's not a legal license for us to apply for. Our position was around the constitutionality of the ability to grow, produce, sell, commercialize CBD, primarily hemp, in Mexico, and that's the constitutional challenge that we won. So we've then been with that. The courts then authorized the COFEPRIS to provide the guidelines and the authorizations for us to be able to act. In Mexico, unlike other markets, what you actually have is the ability to, it doesn't change for everybody. You need 5 challenges in a row to go through the Supreme Court challenge to create 5 with the same result to be able to create jurisprudence in Mexico. So right now, until the next 4 come along and have the same outcome that we did, which took 4 years for us, we will be the only authorized company to commercialize CBD in Mexico.
So you would say you have a pretty good head start.
Yeah, so we have a head start. We have a first mover. Can other people come along and do it? To be honest, I hope so.
Why do you hope so?
It just, in any product market, it's just never good to have one. We can't do it all by ourselves. It's limiting on product category, scope, expertise, experience, capital. I'm fielding calls to your question from cannabis producers that are existing, MSOs that are existing, to pharma and beverage companies. So,
really?
And which, of course, but they have a very singular aspect to their question on how we may be able to work together in the market, which is amazing, though depending on which one goes and how it works, if we're just by ourselves, we're only going to expose the Mexican population to a channel and then the next one and the next one. Where if we come together, a lot like the legalization in Canada, and you had multiple companies actually pushing and creating a volition and a category and an industry, and I think that will be helpful for us.
How is the government there viewing cannabis as a whole? Are they embracing it? You said challenges of regulation are taking place, but with your announcement last month, is this a sign that they're actually warming up to the idea? Or
I think with our announcement last month, it's pretty much the opposite.
It is.
The previous, if we remember, Mexico was heading to federal legalization like Canada in 2017. That was the previous party.
Yeah.
They lost the election. This party is not in favor and shut it all down. And that's when we came in and did our challenge just around how they changed the regulations. That's why there is some things that are allowed in Mexico, some injunctions, because products existed. Authorizations were already given going through 2016, 2017. There's a great company called CBD Life that was already producing in the United States, bringing their products into Mexico. They were then going to produce in Mexico upon legalization. So they have a grandfathered right and they sell their products. But you can imagine they're producing those products in the United States and then importing them into Mexico, which is the inverse on any real manufacturing commerce relationship, right? You would want to produce in a low-cost market like Mexico and export into the United States.
Do you see the Mexican government, I guess, leveraging what you're doing now as more of setting a precedent or a prototype for what the greater THC market could look like if they wind up bringing that online down the road?
I don't think it'll be this party, honestly. I think that they're, Zebra's done what they've done. They won a court challenge. They had a press release that followed ours that said, hey, we're doing this not because we think it's right or we agree. We're doing this because the Supreme Court told us to. Okay. And that's been their position, and they've maintained that position. I do believe that if we can show good governance and good stewardship of an industry, that we can show proficiency and competency in what we do, that it'll de-risk the next groups that come along. So it's very incumbent upon us as Zebra to do the right thing in the market and do it the right way and ensure that we're actually putting the right foundation down for an industry.
Educate me here in Mexico when it comes to their elections. Is it every 4 years like the US?
Yes, so there will be an election next year. Presidents have to turn, but parties can win. So there is an expectation now that the governing party will resume in power for the next 4 years.
So that creates more exclusivity for you long term.
Potentially, yeah. There will be some, again, I think if we can do our job well and the consumer reacts well to the product and we can show that competency, as I say, and de-risk it for the regulator, I think it could open up some other opportunities. But again, that'll be us do our job well, and then we'll see how it goes.
How was that presented then? You talked about how the Supreme Court basically ordered the government to pass this. So how did that all come to fruition and how that worked?
So interestingly, hemp as a product is
Okay.
not illegal in Mexico. The possession of the seeds, the cultivation, the harvesting, the entire processing, manufacturing of products is illegal in Mexico. And so the constitutional challenge that we went after is saying that how can something be legal to purchase but illegal to actually grow and manufacture in Mexico? So, a very simple example I always say is that's like saying I can buy corn tortillas in Mexico, but I actually can't grow corn to make them. And
Think about that.
Yeah, think about that. I'm going to import corn tortillas from Canada for all of Mexico. That just wouldn't make sense. And
No.
that was really there. The Mexican Constitution is what it is. It is the Constitution, and we challenged the segments of the Constitution around what is legal and what we should have the ability to do. But in Mexico, unlike other jurisdictions in other countries, the win and the changes only apply to the company that actually wins the challenge. So it's only Xebra that has the right. So if people want to work in Mexico until something changes, they're going to need to work with us in synergy to be able to make their products or their inputs or their beverages, whatever they want to bring to Mexico. They want to see it there. It'll have to work in conjunction with our authorizations.
I'd be curious to know. Hey, I work for the media. I'm always going to ask, like, some of the calls or some of the people that are calling you, specific companies. You don't obviously have to share that. I don't think you can share that. But at the end of the day, as I said earlier, like, you're fielding a lot of calls from some pretty reputable companies, both in Canada and the US, I assume.
Yeah, and for us, it's really just around alignment. What are you looking to do? How can we help?
What do you look for when it comes to that?
Well, for example, we have a beverage brand in Canada, and part of that is to show the whole supply chain that we know what we're doing and we can actually replicate that, not only for the regulator, but for the partners. It's going to be new for Mexican processors and bottlers and distributors that we're going to have this product. So being able to show how we've been able to grow and lead a market in Canada will give them, I believe, the confidence that, okay, this isn't just an idea. Here's a track record of what they've been able to do. So for example, if I take beverage and you'd like to have beverages in Mexico and you're a CBD or a THC beverage leader in North America and you'd like to enter into that market, then we want to create, kind of like a category captain mentality where, we'll bring a group of beverage brands together and through our licensing be able to not only bring in the inputs and the ingredients, but all the packaging in the cans, as well as the production and then distribution. What we'll be able to offer to a bottler of choice or a partner of choice is lend our license, but we would do all of that for all the partner companies in one place and do all the distribution so that what you're providing to, say, a grocery store or a pharmacy or whatever would be a selection of maybe 5 different CBD beverages versus just ours. We don't want to just have 3 SKUs in Mexico, ours, and go, ha ha ha, the market is all ours. We know that the consumer is going to be looking for different things. Do you want, sparkling, non-sparkling, low dose, high dose? What are the cannabinoids? And the best way to offer that is through a brand collaboration.
So with this first mover advantage, it allows you to essentially build a platform company
Absolutely.
in Mexico to lay the groundwork, lay the foundation, and then if other entrants want to come in, they can, but they're going to have to leverage your infrastructure and come into the portfolio.
Yeah, so Xebra will have a combination of own brands and partner brands or licensed opportunities to be able to create those categories. And again, everything is reverse engineered from us, from the consumer. So if we believe the consumer would be more comfortable with a set of beverages, then our beverage will do better if there is a set of beverages around it. Gummies, cosmetics, supplements, tinctures, all of the different categories that you can have here, we can have at our own supplement line. But if there's a great CBD supplement line that exists already in North America and is a category leader, well, why not bring in their line as well, as long as there's not competing products? There's not going to be enough.
So how does it work if, let's say, some of the gummies have 5% THC? They would have to give you a product that's below 1? Am I understanding that?
Well, first and foremost, we couldn't import it into Mexico. So everything will have to be made in Mexico under our license and our authorizations. So if you have a formulation, say you're a beverage supplier and, you've got your special sauce, right? Your KFC, your secret ingredients, we'll just basically take those and manufacture those under your recipe, under our license, and be able to bring those to market. So it'll be your beverage brand, can, look, feel, ingredients, everything in the market, but just produced under our license. And the goal for me with my CPG background is understanding that when you have a great category of products introduced to a new market, it's better to have choice. price point, sure.
Yeah.
Offering and flavoring, obviously branding. Some brands, trend more female, some are more male, some are younger, some are older, some have different cannabinoid mixes, for example, that maybe do different things. Like my mom will drink a CBD beverage because, it's good for arthritis. She likes it. My son, 17, probably drinking a beverage for a different reason.
Yeah.
And so, we have to make sure that we expose the market and give them a rounded set. Not only, I'm talking beverages, because I think it'll be one of the first things that we do, but in all the different categories that we're looking at.
Do you think, have you had much feedback on how people from Mexico view, say, cannabis, THC, whether it's beverages, edibles, flowers? How do they view it right now?
Yeah, it's a very conservative market. It's a very religious market, obviously. They don't have a lot of exposure to it. But a lot of the major centers, so the Mexico cities, the Monterreys of the world, they're very westernized. And so, you will see, you have Shake Shack on the corner of, 20 times in Mexico Mexico City as I'm driving around. So I love Shake Shack, but I just wouldn't expect Shake Shack in Mexico City. So, there is a love for some of those, more US or Western brands and thought processes. They probably didn't think a lot about milkshakes until the US market brought that milkshake to the Mexican market. And so, I use that as a reference around CBD as well. There's not a lot of exposure there because, like Canada, all of these, CBD, THC, cannabinoids have been illegal. And so it's just been bad, and it's been viewed as society as bad. And so there's going to be an educational process. But, there's already we've already gone through the first step like Canada did. There's already medical legalization in Mexico. So if a doctor prescribes you CBD and in one magical case THC, those are upheld, and it goes to a pharmacy to compound that medicine and be able to create that medicine for you. And that's exactly how we're actually going to start, is the companies that have access to CBD domestically for medicine with our authorizations, we can now access that CBD in Mexico. But again, everything that we have is domestic. So we are the first to do domestic things. Lots of companies can import things, but not only will the supply chain, I think, be important and create a value add in Mexico upon legalization for THC, which will probably be inevitable, whether it's this next administration or the one following. And then within the next 5 to 10 years, you will have federal legalization in Mexico. And so I think if a company like ours does a great job in stewarding this, not only will we push the market, but we'll be the category leader and the first mover to be able to pivot our CBD supply chain all the way from seed, cultivation, manufacturing, and processing into THC. So upon legalization, will everybody be able to do it? Sure. But think of Canada. It took years to get, where we are today.
Well, when I asked earlier about fielding calls, the US market right now with a lot of the MSOs, they're downsizing, they're focusing on profit right now, and it seems like they're fixated on the US market alone. But Canada, there's oversupply of cannabis, as we know. People looking, or I should say companies that are always looking to explore outside of the country. So walk me through, if there's the Canopies and Tilrays of the world, they want to get their beverages at the Mexican market. They actually go through you.
Yeah.
So when it comes to production, selling, all that sort of stuff, there's an limited amount, I assume, that they, under your license, that they could provide within the Mexican market, correct?
A limited amount?
Yeah.
There's no limits to what we can do. The only limits are around up to 1% THC, so CBD up to 1%.
Right,
THC.
1%. But I'm saying, at the end of the day, as far as manufacturing on an annual basis,
there's no maximums.
Wow.
Yeah. No, we have. We have the legal right to do these products, just like we have the legal right to do corn now. In my earlier example, we have the right to create something for the market that's just a domestic supply.
Do you have it? Go ahead.
I was going to say, is there a consumer education element that's going into this, to being able to educate the consumers as it is CBD and it's not like a THC forward substance?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and the answer is yes. The bigger question is how.
Yes.
How are we going to be able to access that? And I think a lot of it, from my experience, when I was in specialty coffee in the early 90s, nobody's going to drink a latte J. That's crazy talk. And then, look where we are today. And so a lot of that actually came with people just going into coffee shops and exploring. And so I think a lot of it will be our retail partners.
Vente. What's Vente?
Exactly. And so I think getting to the right retailers to be, that engage with their customers. If you're a pharmacy, think of going to, a big a department store in the US, like a Macy's or a Saks, right? And you want to buy a suit, there's all kinds of different suits, but there's all little stores within a store, right? Of the Ted Baker section or the Boss section, and there's people that can tell you the differences between those different brands and maybe the cut or the style or the feel. And I think that's what we'll need the same way here, just around pharmacies and people that work in the pharmacies, that, you know, when you go and just, oh geez, I've got, you know, pain in my arms, and oh well, do you want Voltaren, or do you want an Emugel, or do you want a, you know, a CBD cream, you know, that type of, oh, tell me more about that, you know, should the consumer say. And so we really have to work, I think, with the retailers and getting the right retailers that want to educate the consumer, because they've got touches beyond anything any individual company can do, right? And because, you know, we can't celebrity market or do the things that, you know, northern or most Western countries would do, you know, whether it's celebrity marketing or whatever, you know, it's really just around education. And I really think it needs to start from the health benefits.
So there definitely will be an experiential component.
Absolutely. It has to be. And again, you know, that's, you know, it's very idealistic of me to say every one of our retail partners will have this great education experience. But it's incumbent upon us to try and find the retailers and try and help them explain that their success will be tied to that as well around selling our products.
What's your growth trajectory look like, let's say, over the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, it's a great question. It'll depend on which categories we can really get going. You know, obviously beverages in Mexico is a massive category. Something like, you know, edibles would be a massive category as well, but there's not one to compare to. So, you know, if you think about, you know, the size of, I think the second, third, and fourth largest Coca-Cola distributors in the world are all in Mexico. So, you know, the amount of consumable beverage in Mexico is a very strong market. And I think that's what we really have to look at, is that where are the markets where there's an easy changeover into CBD products, that the customer will see that, be it, you know, healthcare markets or beverages, you know, supplements, I think will be important. You know, you're getting a rise of, you know, big GNC Popeyes type brands popping up throughout Mexico, and people really, you know, the Mexican population really embracing supplements. And so, you know, can we get with the right groups there to start, you know, helping people understand CBD?
How's the week been here at the conference?
It's been amazing. Been on stage a couple of times and lots of conversations and a lot of similar looks in the audience, kind of like interesting. How did they do that? What are they going to do now? So, you know, way more questions than answers. And to be honest, you know, I have them as well. You know, it's going to be an ongoing
but there
process.
Is interest, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. And I'm taking a better today than yesterday, not as good as tomorrow approach. It's evolution, not revolution. We're going to have to see who really wants to work with us and who wants to take that step. And, you know, if we have this large company or this large company and they come from different industries, our approach to the market is going to be different. But if one really wants to support us and you're dragging one kicking and screaming, you know, commerce takes the easy path. And so you're going to say, hey, you want to work with us? Let's create a market together. Let's do it.
All right, wrapping it up. I've asked this to everybody today that I've interviewed. What would you say if someone were to ask you, because we want to have this takeaway from the conference, why is it still a good idea to invest in cannabis? What would your response be?
It is probably the most untapped consumer packaged goods market. And of course it's tapped, but it's really untapped from its scale, because there's so much stigma that you had to go from illegal to legal. So much stigma in the United States. This state is, this state isn't. Oh, medical is, you know, recreational isn't. There's so much confusion that I think for a lot of consumers, that's just a lot of effort. It's a lot of thinking, and
hence the reason why there's investor fatigue, right?
I think investor fatigue, you know, I saw it in the beginning. I said to you, I never understood, you know, valuations based on size of growable canopy. Okay, so if I've got 2 buildings and you've got 1, I'm worth twice as much as you, though I don't grow anything and you do. Like, how does that make sense? But
that actually happened.
That's actually happened. Funded capacity. And then that metric didn't work. And so what did the markets do? They pivoted and said, well, let's then go to low cost production. So massive amounts of canopy pivoted to low cost production. Nobody asked the consumer if they really wanted low price crappy weed, because when you go to the store, you know, I ran a group that actually had retail stores in Alberta, and they knew, our customers knew on Thursday afternoons we got delivery, and all of our craft product was sold out by 2:00 in the afternoon every Thursday, and then they just come back next Thursday, and you were just basically limiting yourself to, for the other 6 days of the week, what else you could get from the government to be able to sell. So the consumer knows. Nobody asked the consumer in this industry what they were looking for, what they wanted to buy, and how they wanted to buy it.
That's a good point.
A lot of the markets just bet on, oh, it's going to be soccer moms having gummies. You know, we've got this massive market. Nobody asked soccer moms if they were going to buy a lot of gummies, and maybe they did. But
a lot of assumptions.
Yeah, a lot of assumptions, and just not a lot of scale around those assumptions.
Yeah, that's for sure. This has been great.
Yeah,
honestly, congrats. I'm glad, you got a chance to obviously connect with us with your busy schedule. But you guys trade under what stock exchange?
CSE. So it's XBRA.
XBRA.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Thanks, man.
All right. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you. Thanks, bub.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching, and if you want to learn more about the emerging industries that we cover, then leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to interview, the questions you want asked, and the information that you want to learn. We want to hear from you. As usual, click on that bell for all notifications to get the latest information, share this video with your network, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.